Is your practice tired of wrestling with insurance denials, deciphering EOBs, and watching your revenue slip through the cracks? You are not alone. Welcome to The Claim Game, the podcast designed to cut through the confusion and provide you with the best practices for revenue cycle management success. We are Jeremy and Kathryn Zug, and we've been with people just like you in the trenches. Each week, we'll break down complex billing processes, share real-world solutions from practices like yours, and ask questions of the game makers and changers of healthcare so you can take control of your revenue. Let's turn those claim denials into deposits and help you return to focusing on patient care. It's time to win the claim game.
Welcome back to The Claim Game. I'm Jeremy Zug, and this is my co-host, Kathryn Zug. As a reminder, in this season of The Claim Game, we are going through the revenue cycle management best practices, one board territory at a time. Last time around the table, we finished the final stage of patient registration, checkout. Remember, these are your key territories, and mastering each one is crucial for victory. We'll be grabbing a magnifying glass to zoom in on spaces within these domains, revealing the winning strategies to navigate the board with ease and confidence, ultimately claiming victory for your practice's bottom line.
Quick reminder, if you missed the initial setup of the board and you are confused about what these territories are, we recommend you going back to episode 1 to learn about the board landscape.
Now, let's focus our attention on our current territory, patient registration. Today, we're zooming in on the key performance indicators space.
Sure are.
Get ready to analyze its unique challenges and discover the optimal moves to conquer it. All right, let's get started. We've spent the last few episodes talking about patient registration, our second territory on the RCM Game Board. And today we're bringing that series to a close by talking about something absolutely vital, measuring your success. How do you know if patient registration processes are actually working? So, Kathryn, when practice owners think about patient registration, they often focus on the day-to-day tasks.
And there are usually a lot of them.
There are a lot of them. But how can they move beyond the task and use data to truly understand the health of this part of their business?
I mean, moving beyond the day-to-day in patient registration can be really difficult. And we've seen this because in our professional services, we've had times where we've had to say, hey, we need to retrain your admin, or we're gonna implement this new SOP in your practice. And so often we get resistance from the practice owners, like, my admin can't leave the desk. They don't have time. And so I know that this is a very hard task because we've heard that from you. We've heard that from people like you. And so it does take discipline and dedication. I think you have to really believe in its value first and foremost. And then there will be some practical tips on what you should be doing to make this easier. But we recommend a monthly data poll to step out of that day-to-day so that you can see if your day-to-day could be made easier. I mean, this is supposed to help you with efficiency and make your lives easier, not harder. So getting a clear picture of your patient registration health is really, really important. It's going to help you identify any bottlenecks. It's going to improve patient retention. It's going to improve provider satisfaction, and it's ultimately going to increase your revenue. So really, you can't afford not to take a break from the day-to-day because it shifts your focus from simply completing these tasks to optimizing this critical business process. The fact that patient registration is a territory on the board indicates its importance. It has made it into one of those main stakeholder
positions. That's right. I have a list of the metrics you recommended tracking. Let's start with a big one, provider utilization. What exactly, and we've talked about this a little bit, but what exactly does this metric measure? And why is it so important for a practice's financial health?
Okay, so what is it? Provider utilization. And we talked a little bit about this in checkout, but provider utilization measures the percentage of a provider's available time that is actually filled with appointments. And by available time, I don't mean that a provider is available from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. every weekday. That is technically true.
But maybe not just for patient appointments. I mean,
well, also who's working 12-hour days 5 days a week? I mean, you can't.
Yeah,
I'm sure people do. But I'm just saying it's not to say because I'm available here, this is what I want to utilize.
Yeah.
There's a difference between when a provider is available and utilization. Utilization availability and regular availability are different. And so this is really a goal setting metric. How many hours does the provider want to work? Maybe they want to work between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. somewhere, but they only want to work 40 hours.
That's right.
Right? Or 50 hours, who knows? So this is a goal setting activity. This is about how many hours they want to work, about when they want to work, and this is about provider satisfaction. So it really tells you how effectively your scheduling and patient flow processes are working in relation to goals within the practice. And I think it's important that not only for provider utilization, but that your providers have goals. That if you're the owner of this practice, you're sitting down with your providers and they're setting goals.
Yeah, that would be good.
Because you can get really unmotivated in a job quickly.
Yeah, out of touch. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so then why is it important? Well, a low utilization rate means that someone has an empty calendar, which isn't good.
Yeah.
And that translates directly to untapped revenue.
100%.
Yeah.
How can a practice owner pull this data from their system, and what should they do if they see their utilization rate drop or is low?
So how to pull the data. First, you can pull part of this data from your EHR just by hopefully running a report of a provider's schedule of appointments. If I could see a list of appointments by provider, I'm going to run that. And then I'm going to compare that to preset goals. Part of provider utilization is that you need to do this ahead of time on some sort of spreadsheet, or you have to document what is the goal, right?
Sure.
And compare it to whether you have to manually pull from your EHR the calendar view. You might have to do that and compare it. It really depends on the capability of your EHR. And so maybe this is another thing you put on a list for EHR investigation.
Yeah.
Like, is there a report where I can pull appointments by provider for the month or for a custom date range?
So how often should we be pulling this stuff?
Yeah, I think for most of these metrics, we're going to pull them monthly. I usually do it, at the beginning of a month or so, and you're going to pull an entire month, or you're going to pull it weekly, especially if it's high calorie burn to get this information.
Could be a lot of volume, a lot of data.
Yeah. But you really want to keep a close eye on it, because even from week to week, you can make it. I think if you have a problem, especially, I'd pull it more frequently, because then you're going to see week over week, am I making progress toward proper utilization of this provider, for example?
Yeah, small problems become big problems.
Yeah, and you might only need to pull it for one or two of your providers instead of all of them if you only have a problem with a few, whether it be over or under utilization. And then your dashboard should track the number of appointments completed, the total number of hours a provider worked, and the total number of hours the provider was available. So what does a low utilization rate indicate? A low utilization rate might indicate that there's a problem with your patient intake. Maybe the provider needs to refill out that provider preference form, because whatever there is some metric on that, or a data point on that is keeping them from matching with patients. Maybe your admin's actually doing a great job and they're following the SOP for provider assignment to a T, but then something is just not matching this provider with patients. So we might have to have a heart-to-heart with their provider too if they have a very specific preference. It is okay for a provider to be underutilized if they are trying to reach a very specific demographic for a limited amount of time.
Ooh, talk more about that.
So, for example, you might have a provider, maybe you're a practice that takes Blue Cross Blue Shield and Medicaid.
Sure.
but this provider has come into your practice and has made it very clear that they are not interested in working with the Medicaid population. They really want to work with Blue Cross Blue Shield. They want to make more money, perhaps.
Why not?
And so they are limiting their Medicaid caseload, or maybe they're not taking a Medicaid caseload at all. It might take longer for that provider to fill a caseload because maybe you have really, really good marketing and a good sales funnel for your Medicaid clients. I would set a goal for that. So if you don't see enough progress in a certain amount of time, like there has to be some kind of maybe a hybrid, or maybe you take a certain number of Medicaid patients and then over time you kind of wean off of that.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We've seen that with providers.
Yeah, but it's all about goal setting. And so, okay, other reasons that you might have underutilization or low utilization. So it could be your patient intake process. It could be your provider has crazy preferences that you either need to revisit or you need to work according to a timeline. You could have bad marketing.
You could.
You might just not be getting leads, period. So it's one thing to be getting leads that a provider is not interested in taking. And it's another thing to not have an appropriate influx of patients at all.
Makes sense.
Right. And then it could also suggest that your scheduling team is just not effective in filling open slots. So maybe you just don't have, maybe.
I mean, that's a lot of potential issues for sure. What else?
So it's possible that the admin needs a different goal for provider assignment and scheduling. Are they aware of specific goals? And are they currently prioritizing something else? That could be, there could be a goal. Maybe the practice owner has communicated to the admin to prioritize Johnny, provider Johnny. We need to really fill that caseload up. So Mary is getting neglected. So Mary is underutilized. That's okay. Again, as long as the goal has been clearly stated, there's a timeline and it's tracking according to your expectations. That's okay for a time, but at some point, Mary's going to get mad.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know?
Yeah, of course.
So you just have to make sure that the communication is clear, I think.
Yeah, expectations, communication, track the data. It makes a lot of sense.
It could also suggest that a provider needs to, again, recomplete their provider preference form. Sometimes a provider gives availability according to their desired schedule instead of facing the brutal facts about their demand signal. I love this point. So similar to my Medicaid Blue Cross Blue Shield example, maybe I'm a provider who wants to work early mornings and be done at 3:30 or 4.
Sounds great.
It's a great idea, but it might take longer to fill your caseload. And so again, it's just, you can do that if you have a really high demand signal.
Sure.
Right? If you're a brand new provider that's not well known and you don't have a reputation in the market, I don't know that that's going to be, it's definitely not going to be fast. So again, I think this is one of those things where you have to kind of pay your dues, build a caseload that you can get until you have the reputation to get people to take time during the day, to come see you. Which if you're a really good provider,
probably going to happen. You have a high likelihood of success.
So this provider utilization, it's a good evaluation tool to make sure that you're focused on goals.
Yeah. And, goals are what drive you forward in your practice. Nobody that accomplished anything difficult or meaningful took an easy route to get there. I mean, it was tough. Put forward some goals that are motivating.
Yeah.
Inspiring.
And I didn't talk about overutilization, but we did talk a little bit about that in checkout. Or provider assignment.
Yeah.
We talked about it in provider assignment. But you also just need to be sensitive to and aware of someone that's being overutilized. I think if I saw someone being overutilized multiple months in a row, I would at the very least have a conversation with the provider and make sure that they're okay with that. And 100%. If they're not, we kind of need to
rein it in.
Yeah. Refer.
Yeah. And so the opposite of high utilization seems like, from our perspective, is missed or canceled appointments. How should practices measure that? And what does a high rate of no-shows or cancellations communicate to us about our patient registration process?
Yeah. So you measure this KPI by tracking the total number of missed and canceled appointments against the total number of scheduled appointments for a specific time period. So all of these metrics are ideally tracked monthly, but if you have a high rate of missed or canceled appointments, I'd be looking at this weekly until those numbers decrease.
I think you have to. You don't have a choice.
Yes. because you're probably sitting there as a practice owner or a provider or an admin. You're like, why am I getting so many cancel? Like, what is it that's causing the cancellations?
Yeah,
So
you
here are
really
some
gotta-
things that this can indicate. A high rate of missed or canceled appointments is certainly a big red flag.
Big.
And I think high is relative, but set a goal.
I mean, you pick, but each specialty is a little different. So for some people, 30 a week is low. For some of you, 30 a week would crush you.
But also, we've known providers that are so excellent that they don't get any.
Yes. One of the first
And
therapists I ever worked with.
There's a correlation there.
Yep.
So it can indicate a few things. It can indicate poor patient communication during intake. So in my mind, that would look like,
oh yeah, you're just missing it.
Yeah,
you're not communicating enough.
You're not communicating enough. You're being unclear, which makes them feel uneasy. So you're planting doubt in their minds about whether or not they really want to come in.
Right.
It can be a lack of clear expectations about the practice's policies. You could have a scheduling process that isn't convenient for patients.
Oh, 100%.
Or it can be something later in your process that turns people away.
Like quality of clinicians.
Yep, for
like
sure. Especially if
manner.
This is someone who's coming back.
Yeah.
And I do think sometimes it's just the timing of your appointment reminders.
Could be.
Do you have something that's getting it onto their calendar? Do you have something that is sending them reminders in a timely fashion with enough in advance that they aren't have time to remember to make arrangements for it, but not so far in advance that they're going to forget again? Lots of things this could indicate.
So how do we pull that data, and what can we do to improve that metric if we're feeling a little bit of a slump?
Yeah, I think this can be pulled directly from your EHR's reporting tools too. Usually, if you schedule an appointment and it gets canceled or missed, you don't delete it. There should be a way to mark it as missed or canceled so that it's a little bit clearer. So it should be either a reporting tool because you have really good reporting in your EHR, or it's I'm going to pull up my calendar and just do a quick count of all my missed canceled appointments, which should be visibly different than my other appointments.
True.
But one of the two ways you should be able to pull that from your EHR. If neither of those are options, then I would be counting them as I'm converting them to missed or canceled.
That makes sense.
So if I'm an admin and I'm managing a calendar and if I have to push the button, I'm tallying it and I'm looking into it further. So every HR is different, but hopefully there are helpful reports. And then how do I improve this? So run a test of your patient registration process. Put a fake patient through the system.
Yeah, pretend to be a fake one.
Plug your email in as if you're on an intake call. See what the emails look like. Are they pretty? I know that's silly. Are they pretty? Are they clear?
Yeah.
What seems unclear to you? I would even have a friend who's not involved in the practice say, hey, can you pretend to be a fake patient for us?
Yeah, like a ghost shopper, or what do they call those?
I just need to run this whole system through and you give me your honest feedback. Maybe ask a few friends. This is like a beta test, right? What's difficult? What's labor intensive for you to fill out? Pay them to do this for you. You can implement an automated appointment reminder system through your EHR or just through Google to refine your no-shows and cancellation policies during intake. It's possible that you just didn't send a reminder at the appropriate time and they forgot, right?
Sure.
It's also important to have a solid waitlist process to quickly fill any of those last-minute cancellations, because maybe not super last minute, but if you have a day like I'm giving birth at home. Ooh, we're crunchy. And so I do my labs like separate from I have a midwife, but separate from an office, right?
Sure.
So I have to go into just like an imaging company. I'm not going to a specific doctor's office. It's not all in-house. And so I have to schedule those really far in advance because it can be hard to get in. And they will call me within 24 hours if they have an opening.
Oh, that's nice.
Which is nice. Which I can't always do, but they clearly have their system.
Yeah. It's nice.
So a wait list will help with that too.
And we've all had experiences like that. Well, not like that. That's actually a good one. But we've all had bad
Yes,
experiences
yeah.
with any number of these issues, and it can be quite frustrating.
Here's the bottom line. Documentation affects your bottom line. Blueprint, the AI assistant for providers, helps you write faster, better notes that keep insurance happy and money flowing for your practice. Check the show notes for the link to give it a try for free.
So let's talk about a metric that has no direct impact on the revenue cycle: form handling audit pass rate. Why is this a key KPI, and what does it tell us about the quality of our intake process?
Form handling audit pass rate is related to HIPAA compliance. Because HIPAA compliance is part of patient registration, we would be remiss to not have a HIPAA metric. So it is an important part of patient registration. But basically, it is maybe this is something your compliance officer does, but it is something where you will sample patient data to make sure that forms are completed fully, ID cards are on file, everything was filed in accordance with your internal HIPAA guidelines. It was updated within the last whatever amount of time that you have determined as your process. Was it updated within the 6-month period? Was it updated annually? Is my list of active patients accurate?
Well, that's a good one.
Whether that be audited because you know it's not, or you use this as your opportunity to keep it up to date.
No, that's good. Like your accountability tool.
But this is just an audit of your patient data. And it's a key KPI because intake errors are a leading cause of claim rejections.
100%.
So it's, and denials. I mean, if you get information wrong. So it's very important for the rest of the RCM cycle as well.
It's great.
These can also be really serious if the error is related to HIPAA violation. So that would be another reason that it's a key metric. And then a low accuracy rate, like if I'm sampling patient data, let's say I decide I want to look at patient data for a 2-week period. I'm going to look at the last 2 weeks of intakes and I'm going to make sure everything looks correct. So when you're doing this audit, a low accuracy rate over, like if I'm looking at a 2-week period, like my data is not fully filled out, or I'm finding a lot of mismatched information between the paperwork and the ID card and the EHR, then that would tell you that you have an intake problem. You have a flawed process, which creates more work for your billing team. It delays cash flow, and it really puts you at risk. So there are a lot of reasons that this KPI is on this dashboard.
For sure. How does a practice go about auditing their forms to get this data? What should they do if they find a low accuracy rate?
So on this KPI dashboard that I am referring to, and I'm going to just make it clear at this point that I am referring to the KPI dashboard that we've developed because it's easier to talk as if it's already developed.
Yeah, for sure.
But there is a tab for form handling audit, which is like a log, and it is a key part of our dashboard to track sampling of new patient forms. So you'll take a sampling of new patient forms. So it really depends on the volume of new intakes that you have as a practice, because you want to have enough to audit the data for inaccuracies. If you only have 5 intakes in 2 weeks, that might not be enough of a time frame. So you'll want to expand it to include, I don't know, I'm going to say you want at least 5 to go through.
Oh, that's a lot.
This data.
Feels like a lot.
Yeah.
But it probably makes sense. It's probably like a critical mass of records.
So the log is going to track the date of the audit, who completed the audit, what date range the sampling was pulled from, and then an indication of audit pass-fail. Yeah, and then notes regarding the findings.
Totally.
Right? So if you see a high fail rate, it could be a sign that your intake forms are too complicated. And hold on, let's go back and talk about pass-fail.
Yeah, we do have to talk about that.
I think it's a fail if you have any inaccuracies.
I agree with that. Yeah, this isn't school, right? No grace, pass-fail, go with the program, huh?
I think you want to see your data have no inaccuracies. Yeah. To me, it's a fail if you have even a single inaccuracy between your forms, your EHR, your supporting documentation like IDs. So back to if you see a high fail rate. If you see a high fail rate, this could be a sign that your intake forms are too complicated. potentially. It could indicate that your staff needs more training. It could indicate that your patient portal is not user-friendly. So maybe you're missing paperwork that you should have. And then you can use this data to make targeted improvements.
For sure.
Because in my notes, I would be noting what specifically was inaccurate, and hopefully a pattern emerges.
Likely it will.
Which it likely will, which will make it a lot easier to fix.
So let's introduce our fourth KPI, which is patient satisfaction survey analysis. It's a lot of words, but this is an optional KPI that would require an actual patient satisfaction survey in order to track. However, we know patient experience is sacrosanct. I mean, you need to have it. So how can we turn survey feedback into an actionable metric for our patient registration process?
KPI really turns subjective patient feedback into measurable data. So it's about using patient satisfaction surveys to get a clear picture of their experience with the registration process itself. Now, I'm not going to say that this is not a potentially brutal, painful metric to track. Especially if you have a lot of improvement needed. But it is one of the most clear, quick ways to get a feedback loop for your practice. So, a high satisfaction score during intake and scheduling can directly lead to higher patient retention rates. And low scores, on the flip side, can highlight specific friction points that might cause patients to drop out of care, whether before their first appointment or maybe they only last so long. That would be another thing to track. How long are they staying around? So it is important to get this feedback, even if it is hard to hear.
Painful. It really gets you right in the feels. How would a practice go about pulling this data, and what should they be looking for in the results?
I would be sending automated satisfaction surveys to new patients after their first appointment or after they complete the intake forms. You want it to be fresh enough in their minds that they're not letting something else influence their results. But the survey should include specific questions about the ease of the intake process, the clarity of the financial information provided, the friendliness of the scheduling staff. You should be looking for patterns in this feedback. For example, if multiple patients mention that the portal was confusing, or
maybe the portal is confusing. But you'd also want to consider the source.
Totally, but if we're talking multiple patients, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Or that they weren't clear on their payment responsibilities. So they get to the office and they're like, what do you mean I owe this right now? Which, should be clear, but it tells you exactly where to focus your improvements.
It's great.
So the more granular you can get with your questions, the better.
Totally. What can a practice do to correct issues highlighted by this data?
I think that the key here is to ask questions that are directly linked to actionable changes.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I'm not going to ask, I don't know, I can't even think of an example of something not to ask.
What did you love about the color of the carpet? If you're not going to change the carpet, don't ask.
Right. Yeah, if you're not willing to make the change, maybe don't ask about it.
Yeah, who cares?
Especially if the feedback is that your staff isn't friendly and they're all naming the same staff person. Like, that can be really hard to address.
Yeah, you would need to address that. Mm-hmm. But you need to address that for the success of the practice as a whole.
Right.
And for the person that's getting bad feedback.
They probably don't like their job very much if they're not being nice to people.
Yeah, they don't want that either.
Yeah, so was the issue related to onboarding, instructions, parking, cleanliness of the staff?
Parking is a common...
We have brought it up a lot, I know. Yeah. The patient portal, the paperwork itself, was that hard to follow? The cost of services, maybe you don't change that, but it's good to know. The wait time in your office, the cleanliness of your office, the provider match, the care they received, checkout. Those are all things that, if isolated, can be addressed.
100%.
So look for patterns. I also think it's important that you make it really easy to fill out this patient satisfaction survey so that you can get a lot of results. Like, you want to get as much feedback as you can. And maybe that's even something that during your first checkout, you say, hey, can you scan this QR code and just fill this out for us? It would be a huge help so that we can get some feedback and improve your experience here.
Fair enough. Makes sense.
So using this feedback to refine your communication and processes is a powerful way to turn patient frustrations into a smooth and positive first impression.
It makes a ton of sense, right? This is a leadership responsibility. You as the practice owner and leader bear a responsibility to your team, to your patients, to your community, to make sure that you are as excellent as you can muster.
Mustered that excellence.
Mustered that excellence, please. So, Kathryn, we've talked a lot about valuable metrics today. Can you give our listeners a quick rundown of our patient registration KPI dashboard and how it helps a practice owner bring all of this data together?
Yeah, so the KPI dashboard that we have available in the Hourglass includes the first 3 metrics. We do actually have a patient satisfaction survey, but the functionality only worked in our Google version. Microsoft has some limitations for integration.
Super weird.
So we only have the first 3 metrics there. On the other hand, our professional services department, we do sell it with the patient satisfaction survey, but it's not that hard to put one together. That it's free to use. But what does our KPI dashboard have? It's a comprehensive tool that aggregates all the metrics we've discussed for those 3 metrics into one central place. It provides a bird's eye view of your intake, scheduling, and checkout processes, and also one for HIPAA compliance, allowing you to really quickly spot trends and bottlenecks. That's why we like having a dashboard. When I hear dashboard, I just think of everything is together and clear to see. You're going to see patterns a lot clearer when you see them all in the same place. So this helps you make a data-driven decision to improve patient flow, increase provider utilization, and ensure that your revenue is running as smoothly as possible. At least that the revenue hangups that you're experiencing are no longer related to patient registration.
That would be great.
They might be coming from somewhere else, but you can at least use this to say it's not here. So it transforms a chaotic, reactive process into a predictable, proactive system.
That's awesome. Yeah. And that's really what you want, a predictive system. And you are running this thing and not the other way around.
This really should be a well-oiled machine because it's such a repeatable process.
Yeah.
At some point, you're going to fine-tune it to the point where it's just
automatic.
Yeah. So now, Jeremy, it's time to draw our case study card. And today's card asks, tell us about a time a practice used their patient registration KPIs to make a big decision about a process or an employee. What did the data reveal and what was the outcome?
I think you were there for this one, but I think that at Group Practice Scaling Summit, Ashley Garrett's data was really helpful. Mm-hmm. She was tracking retention by clinician and made some substantial changes within the life of the practice.
Including intake and patient
registration and professional development for the clinicians themselves. And I remember she mentioned some of those, the clinician wasn't necessarily even doing anything negligent. It was just slipping through the cracks kind of a situation, and they needed to tweak a few things. I mean, the solution really wasn't very big, but goal setting, right? I think the bigger lesson here is that you don't know if you don't know, which is not that.
If you don't track.
Yeah, if you don't track it. And if you know the data and you have precision around what's going on in the life of your practice, you can actually make changes that impact your practice in a exponential kind of way. And that's very useful if you want your practice to sustain itself long term.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason that we really have broken down the RCM process into the 6 territories is because it is just so much easier to pinpoint, analyze, and manage your practice in those categories. And so, yeah, you might not even think you have a problem with patient registration, and then all of a sudden you start tracking stuff and you're like, whoa, this could be way better.
Way better. Cool. So today we talked about the key metrics for patient registration. We discussed today's tool, the patient registration KPI dashboard that's available through our online learning hub, the Hourglass. If you think those would be helpful for your practice, check out the link in the show notes to the Hourglass.
Yeah. Next time on the Claim Game, we will be discussing our next territory on the board, which is eligibility and benefits. And we will be giving a general overview of that whole territory. You won't want to miss it. See you next time.
If you enjoyed today's episode of The Claim Game, please take a moment to leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. It really helps new listeners to find us. Make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing to The Claim Game on your favorite podcast app. Your feedback means so much to us. We want to provide valuable education about revenue cycle management. So if there's something we didn't cover in our topic that was a burning question for you, please let us know so we can try to get you the information you desire. You can find the links to all resources we mentioned in this episode in the show notes. And if you want to dive deeper into our resources, we have two places you can do that. First, you can go to our blog at practicesol.com/blog, where we have 8 years of educational blogs. If you want to learn more about what Practice Solutions does, reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Just go to practicesol.com to learn more and to connect with one of our awesome people on our team. Thanks for listening. We are Jeremy and Kathryn Zug, and this is The Claim Game. See you at the game table next time.